And turn to the Book of Ruth with us this morning. The Book of Ruth, we're going to look at the entire story of Ruth. So we'll get out of here hopefully by 2 o'clock or so. Ruth chapter 1. Man, I love this time of year. It's so beautiful. It's wonderful. As I think about like this time of year, what it means and what it symbolizes for us, it makes me think about one of my favorite stories of all time as well. And so I hope some of you will catch this. I know Pastor Greg will, and I know Pastor Greg will appreciate this. One of my favorite stories of all time is J.R.R. Tolkien's story of Middle Earth, The Lord of the Rings. Okay, so a little bit more than last service. Just a phenomenal story, a phenomenal trilogy, just a great message overall. And when you think about that, and when you think about the story of Lord of the Rings, there's a book that's written right before it. It's called The Hobbit. And The Hobbit is not a set of 3 books. It's really just one book, but it's drawn out into like 3 movies. So if you're a person that's like, I'm going to compare everything in the movie to the book, and if it's not the same way it is in the book, this is probably not going to be your set of movies to watch because there's some creative liberty that goes along with it. It's just a phenomenal story, though. And so The Hobbit is really about a company of dwarves who long ago, they lost their homeland to the dragon Smaug. And something about dwarves is they live in caves. They live in mountains. And this dragon long ago came and took their homeland because it was filled with all sorts of gold and treasures that they discovered. And so Smaug, the dragon, has overtaken the Lonely Mountain and has kicked a specific group of dwarves out, and now they are homeless. They are sojourners. They have no place to call home. And so The Hobbit, the first movie, is called An Unexpected Journey. And it's really about one particular dwarf whose name is Thorin Oakenshield. And Thorin Oakenshield is a dwarf that has a long history of being a part of a kingly lineage, and his ancestry goes long before. And so he's the rightful claimer, he's the rightful owner, he's the rightful king under the mountain. And so it's really about King Thorin Oakenshield reclaiming his homeland, reclaiming the Lonely Mountain. And Gandalf the wizard puts together it's called a company all throughout the book, it's all throughout the movies, it's called Thorin's Company. And so they are charged and tasked with reclaiming this mountain, to fulfill prophecy, to reclaim the Lonely Mountain, and to finally have a place to call home once again. And it's a part of 13 dwarves, including Thorin. If you think Thorin sounds like a strange name, you ought to hear some of the other ones. Balin, Dolly, Philly, all these kind of names, so I won't bore you with those. But it's a small company of dwarves, and to make the 14th person of the company, there is one lonely hobbit named Bilbo. And Bilbo's a strange part in this company. Dwarves are warriors. Dwarves are burly men. Like they can really take down this dragon. Hobbits, not so much. Hobbits are completely different. Well, as they're making this way to the Lonely Mountain, as they're making this way in this journey, they come across a company of orcs. And orcs are like the bad guys with the Dark Lord Sauron. Orcs are kind of what it sounds like. Nasty, grimly looking creatures. And their whole objective is to stop this company from reaching the mountain and reclaiming this homeland, because the Dark Lord Sauron wants to claim it for his own political and strategic strategies. They escape this orc attack, and they find themselves in Rivendell, which is the home of the elves. And King Elrond is the king over the elves in Rivendell, and the company of dwarves and Bilbo, they find shelter and they find refuge in Rivendell. So during their time in Rivendell, Lord Elrond, he begins to study this map that Thorin Oakenshield is carrying with him so that they can find the secret passageway into the Lonely Mountain. Lord Elrond is examining this map alongside of a lady named Galadriel that comes, and she's one of the most powerful beings in Middle Earth as well. And something is unsettling to her about this quest. Not necessarily about the dwarves reclaiming the Lonely Mountain, but the underlying theme of what is secretly taking place while they're on this journey. She makes this comment to Gandalf the wizard. She makes this comment that things have been set in motion that we do not yet understand. There's something about this quest that is just perplexing and troubling to her, and she doesn't know it yet. And while she's having this conversation with Gandalf of what this journey is going to unfold, Thorin Oakenshield and his company secretly sneak out of Rivendell, and they continue on their quest. They continue on this journey. While Galadriel and Gandalf are speaking, Gandalf begins to leave the conversation because he knows that he must continue on with the dwarves. And as he's walking away, Galadriel asks him this question: why the halfling? Why the hobbit? That's a great question. It's a reasonable question because hobbits, halflings, are small. Exactly what you would picture from their name. They're really no more than like 3 feet tall. They're small. They're inexperienced. And halflings, in the context of kings and wizards and dwarves, they're really out of place. It makes no sense. In a company of dwarves, why would you choose the halfling? Why would you choose the hobbit? And Gandalf responds with this: I don't know. Sauron, he says, I don't know. Saruman believes it is only great power that can hold evil in check. But that is not what I have found. I have found it is the small things, everyday deeds of ordinary folk that keep the darkness at bay. Simple acts of kindness and love. Why Bilbo Baggins? He chuckles. Perhaps it has become afraid, and that gives me great courage. Chills right there, Pastor Greg. Bilbo is the unexpected choice in this company of dwarves. He's the unexpected choice in this company among warriors. But as this story unfolds and as they go about this unexpected journey, we see just how crucial Bilbo is to the mission of reclaiming the Lonely Mountain. And in our series and in our study of these unexpected characters in the lineage and in the story of Jesus, we've looked at unexpected characters like Tamar and Rahab. And this morning, we're going to look at the unexpected character of Ruth, whose story is really filled with all sorts of unexpected surprises. So we're going to look at the entire story really quickly in our time this morning. Ruth takes place in the time of the Judges. And if you read the book of Judges, you'll see this theme that is repeated over and over. Everybody did what was right in their own eyes. They did evil in the sight of the Lord, and they did what was right in their own eyes. It's just a time that is in complete political, social, and spiritual unrest. It's just not a good time in the nation of Israel's history. And so a famine comes along into Bethlehem, and for what reason, we don't know exactly why this famine is come across at this time. Sometimes famines are used as like a divine judgment from God on his people, but we don't really know exactly why that's the case in the book of Ruth. We just know that a famine has come into the land. And so a man named Elimelech with his wife Naomi take their 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion, and they leave Bethlehem and they flee to a place called Moab. And Moab is just across the Dead Sea on the other side from Judah, and it is traditionally known as one of Israel's enemies. And so they leave this place of promise, and Bethlehem, and they flee to this country of Moab. And we pick up in chapter 1, verse 3. Follow along with me. So while they went in the country of Moab and they remained there, verse 3, but Elimelech, the husband of Naomi, died. And she was left with her 2 sons. These took Moabite wives. The name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other was Ruth. They lived there about 10 years, and both Mahlon and Chilion died, so that the woman was left without her 2 sons and her husband. And Naomi is left as a widow. And now she's she has no sons as well. So she is in this place. She is in this land of compromise. She's in the land of Moab, and she has no one to provide for her. She has no one to take care of her. Why did Elimelech die? We don't know. Why did her 2 sons die? We have no idea. There's speculation. We can kind of discuss that of like, why on earth did her husband and her sons die? We have no idea. We're not told why. All we're told is that they are dead. So now Naomi is left with her 2 daughters-in-law, Orpah and Ruth, and she is in this land of, she is a sojourner. She has no relatives. She has no hope. She has no purpose for being in this land, and all we know is that she finds herself in the land of Moab with no hope for her future. And so she tries to convince her daughters-in-law to return. There's no way for Naomi to provide. There's no way for Naomi to take care of Orpah and Ruth, so she encourages them to return back to their homeland. How unexpected is this story so far? We pick up in verse 14. As Naomi tries to convince her daughters-in-law to return, verse 14, then they lifted up their voices and they wept again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. Verse 15. And she said, "See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law." But Ruth said, "Do not urge me to leave you or return from following you, for where you will go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord do so to me and more also, if anything but death parts me from you." And when Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more. Eventually, Naomi convinces Orpah to return back to her family so that her family can provide for her, because Naomi has nothing to offer her. But Ruth persisted, and Ruth clung. Ruth remained and showed loyalty and dedication and steadfastness to her mother-in-law, Naomi. And in this moment, we see Ruth, who is a Moabite. She is a part of the land of Moab. She is not a part of the covenant people of God. In this moment, we see not only her loyalty, not only do we see her dedication and her devotion to Naomi, we also see Ruth's moment of faith to not only to Naomi, but also to Naomi's God as well. How unexpected. Ruth remains with Naomi. The story kind of continues. They return back to Bethlehem. They come at the beginning of the barley harvest, and Ruth and Naomi recognize something as they're back in Bethlehem. They recognize, guess what? They need food. Look at chapter 2, verse 3. So that's Ruth set out and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers, and she happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the clan of Elimelech. So Ruth and Naomi realize that they need some food, so Ruth decides that she's going to go to the fields and she's going to glean some of the harvest so that they can have some sustenance, so that they can have food. Old Testament law allowed the poor, the sojourner, the widow, and the orphan to glean from the borders of the field. So what you would have is the harvesters, the reapers, they would come in and take the choice fruits, the first fruits from the midst of the field, and then the outside borders and the corners would be left for these people, the poor, the sojourners, the widows, and the orphans. Why? So that they would be provided for, so that they would be taken care of. And we see in verse 3 that Ruth, as she goes to glean harvest from the field, Ruth just so happened to find her field into this field of this man named Boaz. And at the end of verse 3, we find out he is a part of the clan of Elimelech. She just so happened to find her way into this field. How unexpected. Sarcasm included. So what happens is Boaz hears of Ruth, and Ruth continues to glean from the field and glean from the harvest. Look at verse 8 now. Then Boaz said to her, "Now listen, my daughter, do not go to glean in another field or leave this one, but keep close to my young women. Let your eyes be on the field that they are reaping and go after them. Have I not charged the young men not to touch you? And when you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink for what the young men have drawn." Then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, "Why have I found favor in your eyes, that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner?" What we see here is Boaz begins to provide and take care of Ruth. He says, don't glean from the edges and the perimeter and the corners of the field. Instead, take your choice among the first fruits with the rest of the harvesters, with the rest of the reapers. Continue with them, and when you're thirsty, take what they have drawn out. Stay with them. I will protect you. I will provide for you. And this is perplexing to Ruth. She says, why are you doing this? Why are you taking care of me? If you read on, we find out that Boaz finds out of Ruth's dedication to Naomi. He says, I've heard about your dedication, your steadfastness, how you've left Moab, how you've come here with Naomi, and how you were being with her, and how you were providing and taking care of her. Boaz knows that he is an extension of this part of the family, and he hears this, and so he begins to take care of Ruth. Ruth gathers all that she needs, and she gathers all and in an abundance of what she will be provided, and then she heads back to her home with Naomi. Look at verse 20. And Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, may he be blessed by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the land for the living or the dead. Naomi also said to her, the man is a close relative of ours, one of our redeemers. Ruth returns to Naomi, and she discovers that Boaz is one of their redeemers. How unexpected of Boaz being a part of this part of the family. And so Naomi says, stay close to him. Stay close with him. Don't leave his side. And this is all a part of what you might remember from when we looked at the story of Tamar. This is a part of like the levirate law of marriage. And that since Naomi is now left without a husband, and not only Ruth is left without a husband, the law of levirate marriage said that the next person in line, in the brothers in the husband's line, the next brother, the next male, he would be the one to marry the woman, to provide for her, and to continue on a namesake. And so Naomi says, stay close to Boaz. He's one of our redeemers. He will redeem us. He will provide us. He will take care of us. And so Naomi says, stay close to this man. How unexpected that Ruth finds out about who Boaz truly is and how he can be a part of her redemption story. Well, so Naomi gives Ruth some very clear and some careful instructions of what she's to do. That she is going to go and ask Boaz to act as their redeemer, to go and ask him to rescue, to save, to redeem them. Naomi gives these very careful instructions. Look at chapter 3, verse 9 with me. And as he's laying in the middle of the night, he wakes up suddenly, verse 9. He sees this woman, verse 9, he says, he said, who are you? That's a reasonable question. You wake up in the middle of the night and there's a person in your room. Who are you? And she answered, I am Ruth, your servant. Spread your wings over your servant, for you are a redeemer. And he said, may you be blessed by the Lord, my daughter. You have made this kindness greater than the first, in that you have not gone after young men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you all that you ask, for my fellow townsmen know that you are a worthy woman. And now it is true that I am a redeemer. Good news, bad news. Yet there's a redeemer nearer than I. Remain tonight, and in the morning, if he will redeem you, good. Let him do it. But if he is not willing to redeem you, then as the Lord lives, I will redeem you. Lie down until the morning. Ruth makes this bold declaration of Boaz to act in and step in and to act as their redeemer. And Boaz says, yes, I will do it. I will do all that you've asked. I will redeem. I will provide. I will protect. I will restore you. However, Boaz is a man of character. And he knows that there is a redeemer closer, because there was a certain order of the way people were supposed to go about this. If the husband died, it was supposed to be his brother, and then his uncle, and then his cousin, and then just a line of people afterwards. Boaz knew that there was someone in the place between he and Naomi and Ruth. He knew that there was somewhere else. So he says, yes, I will do it. However, there's somebody else, a closer redeemer, a nearer redeemer. If he won't do it, I will do it, but it's his rightful place first. How unexpected. You can imagine the devastation and the heartbreak of Ruth in this moment. That Boaz is willing, but there's someone closer, and we don't know if he's willing or not. How unexpected. The story continues. Ruth remains with Boaz until the morning. They wake up, and the next day he sends her off with some more food, more supplies, and Boaz knows that he's going to find this man at the gate of the city. And the gate of the city was where legal matters were disputed. So Boaz knows where he's going to go. He knows what he's going to do. Now we pick up in chapter 4, verse 5. Boaz is having this conversation with this man. He says, hey, it's your responsibility. It's your role to step in as the redeemer of Naomi. That's all he's mentioned so far. It's your responsibility to step in for Naomi and to save her. Not only to redeem her, but all of her land, all of her possessions that she has. Verse 5. The man agrees. Then Boaz says, the day that you buy the field from the hand of Naomi, you also acquire Ruth the Moabite, the widow of the dead, in order to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance. Then the Redeemer said, I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I impair my own inheritance. Take my right of redemption yourself, for I cannot redeem it. So Boaz says, redeem Naomi and her land and her inheritance. I will do that. He says, great. And the day that you do it, you also acquire Ruth the Moabite. Remember, a part of the nation of Israel's enemies. You acquire Ruth the Moabite also. And this guy, he thinks about what he's going to do in the presence of all these witnesses, because it's where legal matters were disputed. He says, I can't do this lest I impair my own inheritance. So what does he do? He says, I can't do this. You do it. And so Boaz says, yes, I will do it. In front of all these matters, he makes this legal arrangement, this exchange, and he agrees to step in to fulfill the role of the redeemer for Ruth. How unexpected. And so Ruth and Naomi now have a kinsman redeemer. They have been restored. They've been redeemed from their poverty. They've been redeemed from their sojourning. They've been redeemed from their current situation. What blessing and some unexpected news. And what's even more unexpected is what happens at the end. Look at verse 17 with me. After Boaz takes Ruth to be his wife, the Lord gives her conception. Verse 17, it says this, and the women of the neighborhood they gave him a name, saying, a son has been born to Naomi, and they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, who was the father of David. Now these are the generations of Perez. Perez fathered Hezron. Hezron fathered Ram. Ram fathered Amminadab. Amminadab fathered Nahshon. Nahshon fathered Salmon. Salmon fathered Boaz. Boaz fathered Obed. Obed fathered Jesse. And Jesse fathered David. Ruth gives birth to Obed, who would be the father of Jesse, who would then be the father of David. And generations later, church, who would come from the line of David? None other than Jesus Christ himself. A Moabite woman, a foreigner, a stranger, a Moabite woman has found herself woven into the very fabric of our Christmas story. How unexpected. An unexpected character with many unexpected surprises, twists, and turns in her story. Things that you would expect don't happen. Things that you wouldn't expect do happen. And as we think about this story, and as we think about Ruth's life, as we think about the unexpectedness of her place in the Christmas story of Christmas, here's a couple of things that I think we can pull out from this beautiful story. There's not a whole lot that we can go into, or we can go a whole lot into everything, but I'm going to give you three things at least, okay? This story is just filled with so much, but here's three lessons that we learn from Christmas. The first one is this. At Christmas, God sent our unexpected Redeemer. At Christmas, God sent our unexpected Redeemer. Boaz was Ruth's unexpected Redeemer. Remember, there was somebody nearer than him, closer in proximity than he was. There was supposed to be somebody else. But through a whole bunch of twists and turns in this story, in this unfolding here. And through God's providence, another redeemer would come from the line of David. Yes, Boaz was the kinsman redeemer for Ruth and for Naomi, but ultimately, who would come through the line of David? It would be King Jesus himself. That is the unexpected redeemer that God sent for us. David is the king, and he's the greatest king in all of Israel. But church, Jesus is the King of kings, and he's the Lord of lords. That's who would come from the line of David. Jesus didn't come in an expected way. He came unexpectedly, not in royalty, but in humility. He came as a baby. He came born in a stable, born of a virgin. Jesus didn't come to establish political revolt against Israel's enemies. Instead, Jesus came to bring salvation from our sins so that we might have fellowship with God. Unexpected Redeemer. Jesus is our Redeemer, the unexpected one, but that we all desperately need. At Christmas, God sent our unexpected Redeemer. Secondly, at Christmas, God's salvation is revealed through his unexpected wisdom. Jesus, our unexpected Redeemer, he made salvation possible for you, for me, and for all people. And how did he do it? In an unexpected way, through his death. Did you catch that? Through his death. That does not make sense to us. How can one conquer through death? How can one establish victory through death? It doesn't make sense to us. It's not how the story is supposed to be. Like if you're going to write a story about a hero conquering something, you're not going to include his death. It's not how it's supposed to be. The hero's not supposed to die. Pastor Greg, I think you'll like this one as well. More people might like this story as well. It kind of reminds me of The Dark Knight Rises, another phenomenal trilogy. It reminds me of this story. In the very last movie, we see towards the very end, you've got the antagonist, this guy named Bane. And his whole point is to destroy the very thought of human kindness and the very image of Batman himself. And so at the very end, we discover that he has set off a nuclear bomb that has a timer on it. And Batman and Catwoman and the others, they have no idea of how to stop this bomb. They have no idea of how to disarm this nuclear bomb. So Batman, as time is ticking, Batman makes the decision that he knows he has to make in order for the people to be saved. Batman takes the nuclear bomb out into the bay, and as he's flying away, you see the bomb, boom. You see the bomb detonate. You see the bomb explode. And it's in that moment right there, devastation and mourning begin to take place in all the city of Gotham. Why? Because Batman dies so that the city may live. The hero's not supposed to die. And so we're pulled into this story. We're pulled into maybe some glimmer of last-minute hope. And as the movie continues to go and as the story continues to unravel, we find out that Batman actually didn't die. You recall this story with Alfred in this little cafe. And as he's sitting across, he sees him. He sees him sitting right there. So Batman actually didn't die, but the image of Batman died. And why is that? Because Batman still sacrificed himself on behalf of the city. Batman's sacrifice grips our heart. And it's one of the reasons why we're captivated with stories like this. And it's because of this reason. Intrinsically, we long for the resurrection of the hero. We intrinsically, innately within us, we long for the redemption story of the hero. The hero's not supposed to die. And so that's why when it seems like the hero does die, but that he's come back to life, we celebrate movies like Batman. Because we want the hero to live. Church, Batman's a great story, but this is a better story. Because our hero lives. And it's in this moment that God says this. The wisdom of God is this. Jesus defeated sin through his death and resurrection. And that makes no sense to us. You don't have to turn there, but in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, Paul has this to say as well about the wisdom of God, beginning in verse 21. He says, "For since in the wisdom of God, the world did not know God through wisdom, it pleased God through the folly of what we preach to save those who believe. For Jews demand signs and Greeks seek wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to the Jews and folly to the Gentiles. But to those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men." Here's what Paul is saying here, that the idea and the thought of a crucified Messiah is foolishness to the Jews. And one who gains victory through death is nonsense to the Greek. It makes no sense, humanly speaking, and that's what makes the wisdom of God so beautiful. Boaz was not the likely choice. He was the unexpected redeemer. But in the wisdom of God, not only did he providentially lead Boaz to redeem Ruth and Naomi, but he providentially sent Jesus, his son, to die in your place and in my place. And through his death, we might have victory over sin. The wisdom of God, foolishness to the world, but for those who believe, it's beautiful. It's wonderful. Because in his story of redemption, he takes what is foolish and folly to us and he puts it on full display. And it says, you achieve victory over your sin through my son's death and his resurrection. Essentially, what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 1 is this: the wisdom of God made a way for the people of God to experience the love of God by saving us from the wrath of God so that we might experience the love of God. What the world calls foolishness, the death of the Savior, God uses to display his wisdom. Lastly is this: at Christmas, God includes unexpected people in his redemption story. We see all throughout the story of Ruth, we see this phrase repeated over and over and over. Ruth the Moabite, Ruth the Moabite, Ruth the Moabite. That phrase is used at least 6 times. Why is that? Because Ruth is a foreigner. Ruth is not a Jew. She's an enemy of Israel. She's outside the covenant promises of God. And yet, Ruth is included in the redemption story of God. It's through this title, yes, she's included, but her title emphasizes the grace and the mercy of God in her story, but also in your story and my story as well. It's completely unexpected that God would take people who are far away from him because of our sin, alienated and hostile to God, and how God would include us into his redemption story. It's completely unexpected. It doesn't make sense. But good news, not only has God included us into the story, but through Ruth would come Jesus, our ultimate Redeemer. That is good news for us, church. It's unexpected, but it's good news all the same. That God has chosen and seen fit to include you in his story of redemption, no matter your past, no matter what you've done. God has chosen unexpected people to be a part of his redemption story. So I'm going to invite the praise band to come back up, and I think there's 2 things that we walk away from this, and it's this. First, God invites you to be a part of his redemption story. If you're here this morning and you've never placed your faith in Jesus Christ, you need to know this, that Jesus Christ is your Redeemer. God sent his son on Christmas morning to be your Redeemer so that you could have a way to be delivered from your sins. Yes, that is absolutely true. Jesus came, he came on Christmas morning to die in your place so that through his death you might have victory, you might have resurrection. God invites you to be a part of his redemption story. He just calls you to turn from your sin and to place your faith in Jesus Christ, the unexpected Redeemer. If you're here this morning, you've already professed faith in Christ. If you're already a Christian, God intends to use you in his redemption story. That God doesn't call you to salvation and then say, do whatever, God intends to send you out on his mission. No matter your past, no matter your background, no matter what you've done, no matter how far you've been away from God, he intends to use you. How? To tell people in your workplace, to tell people at your school, in your family, in your home, about what? About the Redeemer in the Christmas story. God intends to use you, church, no matter your past, no matter your background. So I invite you to bow your heads, close your eyes with me, and as you sit into this posture of prayer and you think about what the Lord is leading you to respond to. Maybe you just sit in quiet reflection, thanking God for the salvation that he's granted to you. That what you could not do for yourself, God made possible. What you could not think of rationally in your own mind, God took the foolishness of the world and flipped it on its head to display his wisdom and his power, that through his son's death and resurrection, you might have victory, you might have life. Maybe you just need to think and be thankful for that salvation this morning. Maybe there's people in your life that you need to talk with about Christ. In the holiday season, the Christmas time is a great opportunity to leverage gospel opportunities, to talk about the Redeemer at Christmas time. Maybe you just need to pray for that person in your family, that as you have opportunities with them and you spend time around the holidays, to have a chance to talk with them about Jesus. And maybe you're here this morning and you need to place your faith in Jesus. You need to place your faith in the Redeemer that God sent for you. Here in just a moment as we stand and as we sing, these steps are open. If you need to come and pray and spend some time with the Lord, if you want to lift up people by name to him, you can do that. I'll be down front. Love the opportunity to pray for you, to pray with you. Jesus, our unexpected Redeemer, is the real meaning of Christmas. So, Father, I thank you for your word. God, I pray that these truths would penetrate our hearts and change the way that we live. And it's in Christ's name that I pray. Amen. Church, let's stand and you respond to the Lord.